Hello, Tom the Humble Geek here, sat on the floor in our wine bar, and you might ask, what on earth are you sat on the floor, man? And it's a good question. The reason I'm sat on the floor is because I'm here today to talk to you about riddling. So first off, I'm going to explain to you what riddling is, and then I'm going to explain to you why I'm talking in riddles about riddling. So first off, what is riddling? To explain this, I'm going to have to explain how you make a sparkling wine in the traditional method. That's the method that they use to make champagne, and also the method they use to make Cava. Now, I'm going to explain it in a very unsexy, unglamorous kind of way, so apologies if I'm spoiling the magic, but this is how you do it. To make a sparkling wine the traditional method, you take the bottle that you would like to sell the final wine in. You make a still wine, and you put the still wine into that bottle. You add some yeast and some sugar, and you put a beer cap on the top of it. You then go and lie it down. The yeast eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide has nowhere to go because it's trapped in by the beer cap that you've put on the end, so it gets absorbed into the wine. Those are your bubbles for later. The yeast then dies and it lies along the bottom of the bottle. Now, the wine starts to absorb flavour from this dead yeast, and it gives the wine a creamy, nutty flavour that you find in champagnes and Cava. The longer you leave the wine on that dead yeast, the more of that creamy, nutty flavour you get. But at the end of that aging process, you want to get that dead yeast out of the bottle, because nobody wants to pour their glass of sparkling wine and have a layer of gunky dead yeast in the bottom. So that's where the riddling rack comes in. Now, the riddling rack, you slide the bottle in sideways, and then each day someone comes round and turns the wine a little bit and lifts it a little bit. Next day, turns it a little bit, lifts it a little bit. Turns it a bit, lifts it a little bit. Each day this goes on and on and on until the wine is almost stood entirely on its end and all the dead yeast is in the bottom of the bottle, top of the bottle. It's upside down though. You understand. You then dip it in some liquid nitrogen, which freezes the bottom. You turn it back up the other way, flip the cap off, the dead yeast flies out, a little bit of wine to top it up, cork in, cage on the top, that metal thing, and the foil over the top, and your wine is good to sell. So that's how you make it, and that's what a riddling rack is. Now, the Spanish invented a way of not having to use this riddling rack, because the guys who used it were starting to get RSI in their wrists from turning all these bottles, and it's incredibly labour intensive. So they invented something called a gyro pallet, which is a massive metal cage that you stack loads of wine in, and a pair of robotic arms that hold it and do that twisting process for lots and lots of bottles all at once. It proved so popular that most champagne houses use this method now. Most sparkling wine manufacturers actually use it. But there are still a few that do it by hand. And these guys, who make our Llopart Cava, still riddle all of their wines by hand, which is an amazing amount of effort to go to for a Cava that costs £18 a bottle. Now, I did a tasting the other day where one of our guests said to me, "Can you tell the difference? Does a wine that's been riddled by hand taste better than a wine that's been riddled in a gyro pallet?" And I said, I have to be honest, no. I'd be lying if I said you could taste the difference, or at least my palate is not sensitive enough to be able to tell the difference. But what is the honest truth is that if the winemaker is going to that much effort that he is riddling all of the bottles by hand, you know that he's putting the same amount of love into all of the winemaking process and all of the vineyard processes as well. It's a boutique, done by hand, labour of love that's gone into it. And that's exactly what this rosé is. A fantastic rosé Cava. We sell this in the bar. Lots of people say to us, "Oh, it's very dark. Is it really sweet?" And it's not. It's absolutely bone dry. But it's made from 3 red grape varieties: Monastrell, which is incredibly dark grape variety, Pinot Noir and Grenache. So you get a lot of colour from it, but it is bone dry. Come down and give it a go. It's got loads of brambly hedgerow fruit in it. Strawberry, cream, shortbread. Sounds kind of British, that, strawberries, cream and shortbread. But it is Spanish. But it's just a wonderful little drop. But that's what riddling is. this is riddled by hand. Come down and maybe we'll tell you some more riddles. Okay, take care.